I'm here with photographer, printmaker, installation artist Bruna Stude for her current exhibition at East Hawaii Cultural Center entitled The Time That Remains. Thank you for coming, Bruna. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be photographing endangered species.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to exhibit in this beautiful space and work with Andre Kromars, who curated the exhibition. I came to photographing endangered species accidentally, I would say. I never studied art. I'm a self-taught artist. I studied law, but art was always my calling. And I traveled around the world. For a while, I worked on the boats. And as we traveled, I had the opportunity to dive in the most incredible and remote places and observe the life. And with time, I noticed a decline. We would come to the same places every year, year after year, and there would be less coral. It was bleached. It was damaged. The sharks were in lesser numbers. At times, in the peak of the season, there would be none. It would be like not having humpback whales in Hawai'i in December, January. And that is how I thought I'm having an insight in something that might not be as obvious. And I started to document what I've seen and experienced.
What year was that?
Oh, now you're asking me to date me. That was, it started in the end of the 80s. So a long time ago.
So you started out filming sharks?
Photographing sharks and coral, and I did photography on the land, but underwater it's where I feel the happiest. So marine life was what made me most intrigued and interested. And I also feel what's happening under the surface of the ocean is a little less obvious because not many people have opportunity to see it. And just my job working on the boats was so unique and gave me, I worked for the people who love to dive, and that gave me this opportunity to see what was happening.
And the ocean itself is a unique lens for looking at reality as well, physically.
It really is, and it is also, I was born by the water, and I from as long as I remember, that was kind of my world.
The Adriatic Sea? The
Adriatic Sea. I was born in Split, Dalmatian Coast, and yeah, I learned to swim, I think, before I learned to walk, and so that kind of is my natural habitat.
So that's a perfect segue into the first piece, the shark piece?
Yes, that is one of the shark fin soup is one of the series that I keep going back to. It is astonishing that we humans kill 100 million sharks a year. And that is a little piece of information that not many people know. And I feel that through my work, I'm able to share that piece of data. And at first I created, these are woodblock prints that I at first created in the yellows and reds, which are the color of the Chinese flag. Because Chinese soup, the attraction to Chinese soup, which is considered to be aphrodisiac, is one of the main culprits for loss of shark species. Even whale sharks are killed just for their fins, and the meat is discarded, and the sharks cannot keep up. As I traveled on the boats, we would, in the most remote corners of the world, like Micronesia, the Andaman Islands, you would imagine that there is no demand for the delicacy like that. But they're little fishing boats servicing large boats, and they just pay the villagers to catch even young sharks, and they cut off the fins. And and it's tragic. It's a tragic story of the sharks that, again, I kind of feel it's important to share that story. So this is my third version of the shark fin soup. What I try to do is to write on certain days how many sharks theoretically would be killed if we divide 100 millions with 365 days. And it's just devastating way of we are treating these majestic creatures.
Thus the number of pieces in this installation?
365, yeah. And the number starts from the day one, which is, I don't know exact number, but it's about 270,000, and then it goes to 100 million.
In Australia, where I used to dive, they had a bounty out on sharks. They would pay per fin. Yeah, and this is still, I mean, it is, the laws are passed, but the habits remain. And I feel educating everyone you can reach out to is the only way that those terrible actions can be reduced and hopefully stopped one day. They were perceived as predators, and it was humans or sharks was the perception in Australia always.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how many humans the sharks killed last year, but a few years back, average it was 8 a year. And we kind of outdid them with 100 millions less 8.
It's quite a disparity in numbers.
Yeah, it is horrible that at this time when we do have knowledge and ability to learn, even if we didn't know it, it's in media and you can gain knowledge easily, that the practice still continues in many places.
Yeah. The first piece of yours that I saw was the small shark print that Andre brought back from your studios when he was researching the exhibition. This is the entire body of work I had not seen until now. It's
I have been working with sharks. I can't remember exactly how long, but very long time I have been doing the installations and just trying to show the beauty, because we're so used to atrocities, seeing atrocities, seeing human suffering, and it's really hard to wrap your mind around the subject matter when you are kind of becoming numb to the horrors that are happening in the world. And so I always felt it's the data and the beauty that can help us understand or relate to it.
Very nice. The next piece is
the Battle of the Owls.
Yes. Why the Battle of the Owls? From the myth.
It's a Hawaii folk tale, and I was intrigued. I besides marine life, I love nature. I love birds. I love all the animals, and I really feel that pueos are very special. I have one that lives nearby us, and it's very comfortable around humans and just hunts the pasture, sometimes flies by my window as I'm sitting in my living room, and I feel like I know him. But in general, I think that a role of the pueo in the Hawaiian mythology and the connection to humans, it's fascinating. And the Battle of the Owls is kind of explains how the owl saved the human, and that is where the beginning of that connection is. And I'm not going to repeat the whole story, but towards the end of the story, the owls saved a human by darkening the sky and saved him from the execution. And I was trying to show the numbers, and I also tried to show the uniqueness with my processing, how each one is, it's the same, this is the same negative, just printed many different times, because every living creature is unique. And just saying an owl or a pueo, it kind of doesn't give them identity. I try to give them the identity.
That was going to be a question I had. You're inspired by, there's Amy Atkins, cyanotype?
Anna Atkins, that
Anna
was,
Atkins.
yeah, that was, she did the first book on plants.
Right.
And that is about the plants, the ferns. But even my photographs are a little bit like photograms. So yeah, you can say that inspiration is driven a little bit by her work, because again, each plant that I photograph, like every bird, is individualized by the processing. And so that is, yeah, she does remain a strong influence in my work. Even when I look at the sharks now, they have the colors of cyanotypes, yes. And that would be Anna Atkins' reference as well.
Now that explains some of the questions that I had regarding the variations in each series, what your motivation was from reducing from full color prints to these colors.
Yeah, and as you will see through the exhibit, this is all black and white paper that I don't really like working in the darkroom, and so I let some light come in, and the light brought colors, and that is, I was fascinated by it. Silver gelatin is not my medium. This is actually the first time I have used, someone gave me stacks of paper, like boxes and boxes of paper, and and it was lots of expired paper, so I had a lot ability to experiment, to see what can be done. How do I do this? How can I make it interesting? And I get bored like repeating the same thing all the time. Right. So I started to experiment with chemicals and light, and that helped me to drive this idea of each bird is an individual. It's not just a bird.
Well, that conversation about cyanotype leads us to the ferns.
Correct, and this work, these are all photograms which are created by placing an object or a plant on paper, and which is coated and then exposed in the sun. So these are, I have collected ferns for a long time, and our property has a lot of pasture. Became a pasture. All the native plants were ripped 100 years ago, and but some of the parts of the property still were intact. So I tried to bring back the ferns to their natural places, and when I photograph them, I tried to pull them and keep their roots, and then after I complete my process, put them back so they can live. Nice. And these are platinum palladiums, which is really my medium. That's what I have been practicing for years, and these are my really early platinum palladiums that I've done in the 90s. In about maybe 2010 approximately. I did them at that time. I was using Arches Platine paper, and it was just really my introduction to platinum palladium that was in the tiny works. Now I work in the large pieces, but it's always fun to revisit.
Yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of mediums, people will revisit the origins of a particular technique in order to reinvent it for themselves personally.
Yeah, I think that we all like change too.
Well, I was thinking the cyanotypes, just having looked at Anna Atkins' book on algae? Was it algae?
Yeah, they were. Yes, they are. They're some of the earliest. Yeah, that was the first. Incredibly beautiful. Incredible.
Seeing that when you'd never seen anything depicted in anything other than a drawing or painting.
That's right. Yeah, that was the beginning.
Right.
And I don't know did I do justice to the technique, but I certainly tried.
So let's look at the blow-ups.
Yeah. So that is when I started to work with silver gelatin prints, and I started the photograms with the silver gelatin prints, and again it was it's different. It's a different medium, and it's like you don't work with that medium like you would work with platinum, palladium, or cyanotype. It's completely different. So I kind of tried to, as you said, reinvent the technique and apply same principles to silver gelatin, and this is what I ended. These are actually enlargements from my small prints, because with this technique there is lots of error. It's not trial and error, but there's a lots of errors. There are lots of works that I do not like. The end result. And so what I did is I did a large series of small prints that we'll see around the corner, and then I picked some of, Andre and I picked some of our favorites and did an enlargement.
So the marks of process are the marks in the background.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And then that is really not normal. This is not the usual way how you would process silver gelatin in the darkroom, but it's my way. How
you have an interest in reading nature into your process?
Oh yeah, I definitely. I live in Kalaheo where there is a lot of rain, so I collect rain, and I rinsed my last rinse. I always try to use rain for the last rinse, so that way a little bit of my environment stays within the print. My studio is indoor, outdoor. There is no really clear defined line, so there is a little dirt sometimes, and all kinds of the little creatures crawl over it, but I like it that way. It makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah. So the series, you derived them from around the corner?
Yes, these are the small, I don't know are these exact same prints, but this is, yeah, some of them are. These are the small works that we, the same tree, it's again like I use the same negatives to keep producing the work. I use the same three little ferns and created a series.
How many images were you choosing from to select these?
I actually created a huge, I kind of get a little bit obsessive in printing, and I did a huge number of the prints, not knowing exactly what are we going to do. And so I don't know, maybe Andre would know, who is our director here. He might know how many I had, but it was a stack.
Okay.
It didn't count.
So let's look at this piece, speaking of numbers.
Speaking of numbers, these are the 116 crows. These are, each image, again, from the same photograph, each image represents one of the living alalas that live in captivity here in Hilo, close to Hilo, at Alala Project. They are all, Hawaii has, I believe, 64 endemic birds, and more than half of them are extinct. And alalas are extinct in nature, and the Alala Project, which is conservation groups from Hawaii and in collaboration with San Diego Zoo, they are trying to preserve the species and reintroduce them to nature. And release program, it has been attempted, and it's ongoing process. But I felt, again, creating awareness about this magnificent bird that we we're on the brink of losing, and luckily, we humans have ability to fix things if we apply ourselves. And Alala Project is having good results, and here there is a list of names. Each of these birds, each photograph represents one of the birds listed here with their dates of birth, their sex, and you can kind of find the families when they have the same date of birth, and it's really interesting. It gives them identity again.
Has that anything to do with the distinct diversity of images from this single negative?
No, they just represent the birds. It's just the number of the birds that...
But I mean your choice to create a lot of variety in the print.
Yeah, that was the reason to do. Yeah. And, it was just a random installation. The connection is just the fact that there are 116 of them.
That's the number of images.
That's the number of the images, correct.
Okay. It's a magnificent piece.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see them all together.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's also a wake-up call. This is it. That's it. That's all we have left.
116 is a discrete number.
Yeah.
Not big. We're flying, so we go to the dragonflies.
Another threatened species, endangered, and I just like dragonflies. I think that they are magnificent creatures, and they are such amazing flyers. They actually elements of the way how they are used in building helicopters, the technology which went to building the helicopters. And I live in nature, and the dragonflies are my daily visitors. They come by the studio, they're all around. When the stream is running, there is more of them, and I just felt like it would be important to acknowledge them and the fact that they are also threatened. In this group of work, even more than in Alala grouping or the Pueos, I use a drawing with chemicals besides the developing and playing with the chemicals. And this was done in one day. All these images were done in one day.
They're quite abstracted.
Yeah, I was trying to see what will happen, and because I like to experiment, and I really liked what was happening. So I took as much time as I could during the daylight to produce this grouping of the work.
It's a particularly nice tone to the series.
Yeah, that's the daylight. When you open your window, things happen. If you're in the darkroom.
In the darkroom. So speaking of fragility, we move on to the butterfly.
Yeah, loss of habitat again, and Kamehameha butterfly. It's such an important part of Hawaiian culture, and they are, I think, the state insect. I have never seen one on where I live, on Kaua'i, so that was like I created them to have some in my artwork. And my initial idea was to have a butterfly on clay, so we spent lots of time painting this wall with Kaua'i red clay. And that also comes from the place where I live, and I harvested it there, and it wasn't very successful, so we actually had to recruit little Home Depot paint to help us even it all out. But there is plenty of the clay here, and that's the natural color. And when you work with the black and white paper, it's a challenge to bring color, and I did find some color here, and then we use some color to install them on.
We began discussing the idea of what Frank Zappa said, that writing about music is like dancing about architecture. That we've done a reasonable job of talking about art, so thank you. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing the next thing that you do. Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruna.